many people do we have here? Let me see. I think we can pretty much start. So welcome to all the new panelists. This is session 3. We had 2 sessions already. If anyone is interested, we can share the recording. So today we are continuing. We have some new faces, and I don't know if we want to do a quick round introduction or we can just dive straight into the topics. I think somebody is asking to be admitted. Just give me 1 sec. Oh, Alex. Alex, are you there? All right. Let's start from the beginning. I had few rounds of soul-searching one-on-one discussions with some of the panelists, and the question basically is, okay, Alex, so what's your agenda here? What are we trying to accomplish? And I just quickly give you my view. Grady Butch last time on the last session, he explained the theories or the 3. Can people please mute because we have echo? Yeah, thank you. So Grady talked about 3 ages, golden ages of software. And he mentioned how in the beginning, when we developed computing machinery, there really wasn't any software. We were directly rewiring the machines. But the idea was Herman's cow. That's we'll talk about that cow later. And thank you for reminding me, Tim. So basically what Grady explained, that there was a point in time where we realized that we can actually separate hardware from software. And I can't remember exactly the details, but that was a very exciting moment, because then all of a sudden we started realizing that we can have general purpose machines, which means a machine can do anything we want it to do, program it to do. Now, that was a big, exciting promise of the software. And fast forward to today, and I would say that this is basically a pretty large disappointment. The software did not deliver. There's a few reasons why that happened. One reason is I think it got co-opted or hijacked by the big tech with their own agenda and serving their own shareholders. And it's not a good thing, in my opinion. And then the second reason, let me try to remember what the second reason is. Actually, there are 3 reasons. Big tech, then surveillance capitalism, which just uses this powerful technology to just do the surveillance and try and understand our hidden thoughts and hidden desires and manipulate. One. And with that, the enshittification of those promising services. And the third one, I think, let me think, what's the third one? It's early morning in Vancouver, so I'm a little bit sluggish. Apologies. The third one would be, yeah, the techno-feudalism. The problem with techno-feudalism is that we can here get together and have a brilliant idea and start some brilliant disruptive startup, but pretty soon the big guys will move in and say, okay, you have a nice shop here, it would be a shame something happened to it. So they will just absorb it, just buy us or castrate us or just squish the competition. Excuse me. Feudalism is not about innovation at all. I'm a big fan of capitalism because capitalism is based on innovation, pursuing profit by innovating. And my problem with feudalism, it just wants to squish innovation, establish the lay of the land, and now we're just paying rent and we are being serfs. So with that in mind, I just want to say my silver lining at the light at the end of the tunnel, in my opinion, is this promise of the AI technology, which gives us it can be weaponized for us to fight back. And what I mean by that is, like, if I look at many of the systems that are operational now, I call them concierge services. They are polite and forward, and we can approach it and they will serve us, but their loyalty lies with their maker, with the corporation. Their loyalty is not to us. And I think as humans, we should focus on insisting that this technology should serve us humans, not some faceless corporation. And right now, so far, we've been helpless because we've been just shoved into Facebooks and all this horrible, cesspool of where we are being manipulated and we have no say. But I'm hoping now with AI, we can gain some weapons to fight back. And I'll give you one example. Let's say somebody sends me a link to an article, and I open that article in Chrome browser. All of a sudden, it's a horrible experience because I have all these pop-ups and all these like janky page that keeps shifting over, and I can't even read it. And it's just horrible experience. They're trying to corner me into buying something or influencing me. But if I open the same link in Brave browser, none of that happens. I just have a clean content that I can read. So what is that telling me? Is like Chrome is not interested in serving me. It's interested in serving whatever the agenda in the back office is. Brave is a bit more humane technology. And so now I'm thinking with AI, maybe I can work with Claude to build me a browser where it will be my butler. It would strictly, I can tell it, look, don't show me any ads. Don't show me any videos with Elon Musk talking. And basically, it will provide a more humane experience for me. It will serve me instead of serving some overlord in the background. So that's kind of my agenda. I'm hoping that we can here talk about how can we use AI to serve us instead of us becoming yet again enslaved by yet another wave of technology that's going to turn us into hamsters in the wheel. And I keep hearing how people are now saying, okay, this AI is so addictive. I'm working like 11 hours a day. I'm completely fatigued. I'm exhausted. No, it shouldn't be like that. I personally, when I use AI, I buy myself more free time to think, to walk around, because I unleash those agents to do the menial chores for me. And I'm thinking about the system. I'm thinking about the big picture. What do I actually want to achieve? And it opens up new doors for me. That now I have millions of ideas now that before I would, as Ken said last time, those millions of ideas, we always say, oh, it would be nice if we can do that. But who has the time? Who can set aside 6 months and just work like crazy on building something that may or may not happen? So I'm painting a rosy picture, I know, and there will be people here on the call who are exact opposite of what I'm thinking, who are alarmists and who don't like what where we're going. So I want to open the floor here to discuss what you guys think. Is this a good thing, or should we push back and should we just, enough is enough, and we should not? Over to you, Matt. Thank you very much.
Sure. Hey, folks. Good morning. So, Alex, one thing that you said that really jumped out to me was the idea that AI could be leverage or a weapon for the rest of us to be able to fight back against the control and against these entities that we are all aware of that are now influencing our lives in greater and greater amounts of pressure and force. And I think one of the biggest roadblocks to that in terms of communicating this to larger society is you have to get people to see that in order to do that, you kind of have to be on the same side as the bad guys for a little while, because they're the ones that are serving this inference right now to us. It's kind of like people look at the negative impacts to society that AI is having, and OpenAI is the enemy, or Anthropic is the enemy, and the companies that we say, oh, look at what they're doing to the environment, and all of these things that are valid, right? That are valid complaints, they're valid observations. But I feel like when you look at the long-term strategy, you kind of have to go, yeah, there's a lot of stuff not happening, but I have to embrace it long enough to be able to know it well enough and become an expert in it to turn it around on these companies to where now you have groups of people that are leveraging this technology to go, okay, well, one person can do with Opus 4.6. Well, what can 10 people do with it in terms of what we want to see in society and what we want to achieve? So I think the challenge is getting people to change or consider the idea that we can't paint all AI companies as the enemy that must be avoided. We have to look at them and going, well, they're get for $20 a month, I may get the skills and the leverage to have a better chance of things being on my term. And I think that's a challenging thing for a lot of people to mentally kind of digest.
Thanks, Matt. Yeah, totally agree. I regret that early on when we became initially aware how this powerful tool is coming into our hands, there was this big push, like, oh, it's just a matter of time when we will have the first solopreneur billionaire. That's so, demeaning what we're trying to do. We should be working together, not just like you shoot off and you become another crazy billionaire, because that's very ugly in my mind. But it is what it is. We live in an age of greed and fear, and it's being amplified each day. So I think Graham, over to you.
Hi, thank you. So this is the first time I joined this call. I'm Graham. I'm based in the UK. I won't do a longer introduction than that. Picking up on what Matt said and connecting it back to your sort of opening thoughts, there's a risk that we kind of allow OpenAI and Anthropic and the latest round of AI large companies to become the new feudal overlords, right? That we go, okay, we're going to get out of the surveillance capital era by buying tons of Anthropic tokens and using Claude a load, and then they're selling Claude at vastly under cost so that they can grow their network. Investors want to see a return. Where are they going to get that from enshittification and surveillance capitalism? So we have to make sure that what we're doing is embedding the values that we want to see into not the processes and the tools, but the individuals and the interactions. We've known that for 25 years, that this is not about what tools we use, it's about the systems we create with them, with the humans that are working together. And that, remember, these companies didn't set out to be surveillance capital overlords. They set out to create, to connect people in the world, or to organize and make useful the world's knowledge. It's the steps they made on the way, following playbooks that at the time we all thought were kind of fairly innocuous, like lean startup. Do experiments on your users, find out what resonates with them, optimize for what you're doing, pivot, change direction. That's what took us into the surveillance capital era. And if we kind of use the same playbooks again, we're going to go into a new level of agentic surveillance, or agentic serfdom, however you want to put it.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And again, I think we talked a little bit about it last time. There are people, and I watched some videos, who actually are demonstrating that we could have our own entire system in our bedroom. One guy took I think 4 Mac Minis, put them all together, and you can run large language models, and it's fast and it's pretty awesome. You don't have to be pouring your blood, sweat, and tears into the big brother's machinery. There is a way, and it's just early days, but hopefully we can have. One thing I want to quickly mention before we go to Alex is we've been talking in the background a little bit about forming a kind of a guild for AI craftspeople who are using AI, and the main agenda here is what I try and potentiate is vendor neutral. It's extremely important to be vendor neutral, going back to the principles of free software that was popular in the 80s. The software should be free, we should not charge for it, it's serving humanity, and then again, how it evolved into open source. Those kind of principles and ethics, or code of conduct and professional, affiliation, is what I'm hoping we can get here, so that we are all responsible grown-ups, avoiding harm. Again, Google started with do no harm, and you see how that ended. But enshittification is Cory Doctorow is always talking about that, and it's real. It's well documented. And over to you, Alex.
Thank you. When I heard your introduction, some irony went through my head. We are going back to closed source. We had this thing that was open source and it opened up the software. And right now, when I heard your introduction, I hear it, using it for what the irony is with the black box thing. And some people don't like this word, but in fact, politics needs to be aware, and politics needs to be exactly at that spot where basically you realize this is a step back. And if I followed LinkedIn correctly, and I'm quite active recently there, Simon Wardley just posted that Minister of Member of Parliament in UK exactly said that UK should be the open source AI country. So I just want to put this into the mix. There's an irony, and this irony needs to be tackled and to become aware to politicians. And I know many people think that's a bad word, but in fact, everything is politics. And yeah, there needs to be something done on that front, I guess.
Yeah, but again, I think I'd like to confine this roundtable to just talk about software. I know that it's not possible, but much as we can, right? And then, of course, it's a much larger issue. And as Jason said, how powerful are we overestimating this technology? We keep hearing for a couple of years now that, it hits its ceiling, it can't go any better. And then we see it overcoming that hurdle. So we don't know. I apologize, Lodger. Is this how you pronounce? I'm not sure how to pronounce your name.
It's Ludger, but it's okay.
Oh, Ludger. Okay, apologies. Over to you.
Thank you for the introductions. So what resonated with me when you said it, Alex, in the first time. So what I see is that we need a kind of also cultural shift, a shift of a narrative. Because when we put AI into our normal mindset of capitalism business, to just increase the productivity without looking how good the code is, how secure the software is, I think this would be a drawback. So I guess there must be an awareness that we, of course, maybe can increase the productivity, but do it in an aware way. Do it in a software development process that's a kind of transparent, and people are aware where the drawbacks are, where something has to be verified, and so on. And the other thing I would like to bring in, that maybe we need spaces for developer where they can talk, and like around we discuss here, to have a space where we can speak openly and not just from a business perspective, and speak as humans and not as technicians, to make the fastest software development, to use the technique in the best of a budget, but talk as humans and what we see issues, and to stay in have a chance to speak from our integrity. And also maybe have reflection rooms of our inner state with which we are developing, with which we are designing software, like you had this example with the Chrome browser. So are we just see the broader thing, not just see my the case giver or the company that pays me, to see the broader picture. Okay, what do we do for the real customers to increase a better social life or something, and not by intent design software that hooks people up in the algorithms and doom scrolling, and to bring it and make it transparently for it, and also for the impact that such an malicious software can bring to society. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Ludger, right? Yeah. Ken Beck said something interesting last time. He said, we've been, us geeks, we've been living under this kind of pent-up period, and in his mind it's been decades, where we have all these crazy ideas and everything has been kind of piling up, and we just don't have the time, we don't have the cycles to do it. And according to him, now all of a sudden he thinks we do. And then he mentioned he doesn't think people are ready for what's coming, which to me sounded really, I don't know what he really meant by that, but it sounded like there may be an impeding avalanche of God knows what. And Kant, like he's been surprising us with few like really out from the left field ideas, which I'm always following him. I'm always trying whatever he says, so I'm really curious about that. Over to you, Tim.
So, optimism is a early stage adoption, right? So if you want to look back, people had ideas that once we started getting robotics, that meant that everyone would be able to, be assisted by robots. We would have a lot more leisure time. We'd get a lot more joy out of life. We got the internet. It's going to connect us to all of the human knowledge available on Earth, and it's going to be a new golden era of innovation and brilliance, and we'll be able to lift each other. Oh, and it'll democratize the world. Everyone will be able to see what the rest of the world is like, and it'll bring the continents together, and all the joy will be there. And social media allows us to reach our loved ones all around the world and make new connections. Okay. What happens? Well, we do get a lot of goods out of robots, but as Katzwattel tells us, there's no morally immune, neutral change in the world. With everything that gets better somewhere, somebody else loses, right? With the cars, we lost the horses. We lost the buggy whips. We lost a lot of people who were doing good things for the world. With the internet, we're going to connect all the people of the world together. So what are they going to do? They're going to share conspiracy theories and paranoia and hate and frustration. It's not all they do. We use this for good purposes too, but you got to expect that if you can give someone a worldwide audience, they'll do what it does to grow that. Well, that's going to go back to the feudalism, because enshittification is caused by capitalism, right? A lot of people would consider that you're doing an immoral thing if you start a business for any purpose other than selling it to one of the big guys. And that's the right thing to do. That's how you create value in the world. You start a business, you sell it to Google, you sell it to whoever. And if you're not doing that, what kind of a fool are you? Capitalism gives us enshittification. And the classic example was Google. Gave you the best results you ever saw until they were so big they couldn't grow for their investors anymore. And the only way they could do is by selling more ads, by pushing them to the front of your search results until it's meaningless. So I think that if we're going to fight this, so far the only real roadmap we're given is innovator's dilemma, right? How do the little guys beat the big guys? And they come and they give you something that isn't the same. It's less, but better, right? And I think right now, by the way, if somebody was going to sell unconnected, non-internet, non-Bluetooth home appliances, they would make a fortune, because everybody's sick of all the stupid ways things fail. Well, the innovator dilemma says that, of course, the innovator gets bigger and they move up market and they sell to bigger and bigger customers. And that's where all their attention is. And some little guy pops in. And the little guy doesn't do half as much. But what he does is good enough for the people who couldn't do business with the big guy. The prices are low. So the innovator is competing against people who can't consume otherwise, right? And they find that new audience, and then they grow up and they start to be able to satisfy a broader and broader audience. They become profitable. Eventually they start getting high-end customers and they start focusing upward, and that causes their business to go up until they can be disrupted and they fail. It's the Peter's curse, or the, whichever one you want to chase down. And by the way, we're seeing it. Small language models pushed to the edge, doing a competent job, doing smaller things better than the big heavyweight consumers do. So the interesting question is, because we're still in a stage of optimism and nobody has yet turned this into an evil scheme to promote hate yet. Well, they have, but they've stopped each time. Because we're still here, where's the innovation where we can use this technology in the small ways that actually help people, that grow this into a new kind of a world order, as opposed to going into capitalism and starting a startup to sell to whoever.
Thank you, Tim. So Alex and I talked a little bit about that, and I shared one anecdote. I don't want to waste time here sharing, but bottom line, I think, Alex, you hit the nail. You said it's about attention. If you're getting individual attention, that's worth gold, because we are here kicking around various forums and networks seeking for attention. The attention is very scarce. And that's what some of these new solutions, or whatever they are giving us. I'll just quickly repeat the anecdote, and it may be urban legend. Basically, there was a point in time when one person got sick and nobody could fix that person. They were doing analysis and nobody could diagnose the symptoms, but the symptoms were severe, affecting the quality of life. And the person was growing desperate, and then at one point he met somebody who suggested that there is an app called Vida, V-I-D-A, which it's an expensive service, but if you told him if you download it and you work with it, it may help. So the guy was desperate, so he did that. What this app did was asking the person to ask you how you feel right now, and then ask you, what did you have for breakfast? And also to take the photo of your food, and then how you feel after that. And then he said, okay, well, next time replace bacon maybe with avocado, I don't know. And it's been ongoing for a while, this back and forth. The idea was to always report what you are eating, what you're doing, how are you feeling. So the end result was the guy was fixed, completely healed. And nobody knew what was wrong with him. Nobody knew what fixed him, but he was hacked. And so the point is that, how often do we see our doctor? The doctor has no idea what we're doing. They're giving us blanket, vague diagnosis or vague instructions. But what we really need is some kind of expertise that's guiding us step by step in 1% improvement in whatever area of life we want to do. So maybe, again, I'm going back to concierge versus butler metaphor, where I think technology should primarily serve us humans. And right now it's not doing that. Matt?
Hey, Alex, thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to really underline what Tim just said. Tim, I think that was really insightful, and I agree with what you're saying there. I don't know that my thought here is as well thought out about that, but in terms of feudalism, there's a thought that I just have not been able to shake, and that is, if you look at the Steve Yeggies and the Gunters and the Coles right now, and these folks that are building Gastown and figuring out the Ralph loop and going and having these discoveries that everyone in the AI first or AI augmented community is like, wow, this changes everything. Now we've solved the long context problem. Now we've, through this simplicity that's just been hiding under our nose the whole time, putting a prompt in a while loop, I can go to bed, wake up the next day, and there's a 95% chance this feature is not only going to be done, but it's going to have a high quality code implementation attached to it. Not all the time, but with frontier models, yeah, usually that is the case. And I think the only way we can keep ourselves from getting into this serf or feudalism mentality is if we have an accurate idea of what the F500s, what the Fortune 500s, what the big dogs are doing right now. And the reason I mentioned Steve and all these innovators is because what these folks have done, they've done as one individual that has some combination of expertise and free time and all of this stuff. And as cool as things like Gastown are, and as big of an impact as they are, there's nothing about those that's really like technically mind-blowing. Like, it's not like we've discovered the next thing past LLMs. We've basically said, here's all the pieces, and guess what? If we put them together in this order, then we can get the results out of it. So am I supposed to believe that companies like Amazon and Microsoft and all these other organizations that have unlimited budgets, that have unlimited access to technology, that have unlimited resources to throw at this problem, have not worked through this already? 6 months before any of us have? And I have to ask myself, certainly they have. So why aren't we seeing AWS agents as a service right now, where you put requirements in one side and you have deliverables come out the other? And I have my own like kind of conspiracy theories of like, I don't know, maybe they recognize that what it would do to the workforce. But my point is, and I'll wrap it up, we can't keep ourselves from becoming the serfs of 2026 if we are blind to what the likely thing is that those that want to put boots on necks are doing right now, and what their plans are, and what they're probably going to carry out. And I think our response to that has to be, well, guess what? We have the access to the exact same technology. We can make our own models. We can coordinate ourselves. We have no limits of talent on our side. And what can we build as a collective, as a group, knowing or having a pretty good guess of what those other companies are going to do? And yeah, so I think it's about opening and trying to really guess what's coming down the pike, and we've got to do that before we can even have a response.
Oh, so you are increasing my paranoia now, Matt. Thanks.
Sorry. Yeah.
Well, it's you know,
I wrestle with it, man.
I know.
It keeps me up at night, you know.
I know, but it's Friday the 13th, right? I don't know how many people here are superstitious, but thank you. Yeah, food for thought. Astrid, over to you.
Yeah, there are several points now that I need to speak up. One is, if we think that we can word requirements as a prompt to an LLM exactly enough that the result is what we really wanted, then we are back to waterfall, which is proven to not work. So the idea I can word the requirements of a project exactly enough that I only have to watch the result and then think, oh, that's great, and ship it, I think that's just basically wrong. And what people expect from the use of LLMs in development is exactly that. It's the old dream of, we can finally do waterfall, yay. And it won't work because it was never the problem if we had requirements to develop software that follows those requirements. In my whole career for 30 years now, I never ever had requirements that met the requirements.
Yeah, I can attest to that.
My first big point. We have to, in fact, like Claire Sudbury says, we have to use the same means we have to use with normal software development. We have to use with working with an LLM, because we can't do it without testing or proving or whatever. That is one point. The other is, you can't say, or I can't bring my mind together to fight the monopolism while you still say capitalism is good. Because capitalism without control always results in the concentration of power and wealth in the hand of few, and you need to find means to control this power. My hope with the discussion on LLMs and everything, and what power we could have if we can tame it, my hope would be that we would be able as individuals to connect and to finally be able to explain that innovation is made by free spirits, not by people grinding their bread and butter job just to come by. And it's capitalism. I don't think capitalism drives innovation, because then China wouldn't be as big as it is now. And the third thing I have to rethink, because it's in my mind somewhere. Thank you.
Thank you, Astrid. Just quickly to mention why I think capitalism is innovation because prior to, I may be wrong, but prior to capitalism, prior to the Industrial Revolution, pretty much every generation lived exactly the same the previous generation lived, and there was very little progress. But since we started doing, focusing on innovation, chasing profit, and motivating people to come up with new ideas, we've seen improvements in many areas of our lives. And of course, it comes with a huge cost, which is alienation and heartless exploitation. So I'm not putting rosy glasses on it. But with the return of the techno-feudalism, I fear I'm seeing this innovation kind of slowing down and kind of being castrated. And like, okay, it is what it is. Here's the lay of the land. Just shut up and pay your rent and continue grinding. Another thing I just want to circle back to Matt is, I may be wrong, or I'm talking to some friends, but we feel that for some reason, with this AI technology, it's very hard to establish a moat. And that's quite exciting to me to see the situation where there are no moats. And then, it's a level playing field all of a sudden. It wasn't like that ever before. That reminds me of the early days of the internet, when suddenly one day I realized, hey, wait a minute, I can publish my own content. I don't have to crawl on my knees and beg some publisher. I was getting, back in the 90s, I got a book deal and I was so excited. But then as I was writing my book, I realized that the editors are butchering my book, and I just walked out. I'm like, I'm not gonna, work like that. So there was this big elation when the moat was removed. All of a sudden we have the web and I can publish. That was a big breakthrough, and I think it was a big success. Now I'm hoping with AI we have another moat removed. But enough of that. Over to you, Fortune.
Thank you for inviting me, Alex, and it's so nice to see so many people here I know. I just wanted to pick up where Astrid left off, and I know that this is something that I've spoken to Otter about before several times. How you doing, Otter? And that is one of our favorite people. I'm sure everyone here loves him to death, and that is Dijkstra, right? So, of course, Astrid, your point is clear and obvious, and Dijkstra explains why in his usual sardonic and humorous way, right? So no requirements will meet the requirements. That's because your native language is useful for nothing except fooling yourself with nonsense, to paraphrase Dijkstra. And that's why we need formal languages, and that's why we need mathematics and logic. These are, unfortunately, due to the failure of our general education systems, now sort of tools that are limited, to a certain number of people and not spread more widely among the general populace. And this is, I hope, something that we can do. Certainly I, as a proof engineer, hope to contribute to that. Then secondly, on the question of, Otter's optimism, of course, I enter Silicon Valley, where I'm from, right? I enter from the optimistic space, right? The people who brought me to the internet was Stuart Brand, Kevin Kelly, Brian Eno, the Long Now Foundation. So this is kind of where I enter. All that work is based, of course, on the beautiful work by Doug Engelbart, the inventor of the mouse. His famous 1962 paper talks about this dilemma that we face now, right? How people are going to uplift themselves with tools instead of being crushed by them. And he gives a whole methodology how he thinks that we can accomplish this. But we're not teaching his methods, and we're not starting from the presumption that he did, which is that humans aren't in the loop. They are the sole purpose, reason, and their growth should be the outcome of the loop. And I'm just not seeing this particularly in the responses that we are having around the question of LLMs, either those who are for LLMs, those who are capitalizing or over commercializing the limited technology of the LLM, and those of us who are AI realists and who say, yes, there's good, and yes, we must do something about the potential problems that we see looming. And that's what I wanted to say to you, Otter, and to Astrid, and I hope that brings the conversation forward.
Thank you, Fortune. I just want to go back to what Astrid said, which I agree 100%, and I want to hear counter arguments, which is, I've been around the block a few times, and I've been through many so-called waterfall projects. They are all based on some big-headed, know-it-all people who think they have a crystal ball and they know exactly what is going to be needed in some future time, and then gather the requirements, harden them, freeze them, and then there's marching orders to implement them. And that I've never seen that succeed. And so with this tech-driven, again, are we resurrecting that kind of having a crystal ball and I know exactly what needs to happen and just give these gas town workers marching orders? I go to sleep and wake up in the morning and everything's working. So that to me is a contentious point. I'm not buying at this point. I'm extremely skeptical about that, but I may be persuaded to think otherwise. Does anyone have a counter argument to say, look, Alex, you're wrong on that? Matt?
I'm not going to say, look, Alex, you're wrong, but I will say that, using some of the techniques that some of the pioneers lately that have been coming up with, people have been seeing successful results. And like I said, not 100% of the time, maybe it's 9 out of 10 times. You're going to come back to your machine after either overnight or a couple hours or however long it's been cooking, and you're going to find something that is garbage. You have to start over. Maybe it went awry 60% of the way through. Right now, the way I am working is with my own agentic pipeline that I've named ELVES. I am able to define a PRD in linear, and ELVES splits that into subtasks, and it puts it in a Python harness, and it has its own MCP tools, and I have deterministic quality checks that check the line count, and they check test coverage. And I wake up and I have end-to-end fully functioning features that were also functionally tested in the browser by my agents. And that's with a pipeline that I wrote in my spare time, that I'm consistently getting results from that are quality. And I mention that because I think from what I'm hearing a lot, there's two main concerns. And Fortune and Astrid, I hear what you're saying, and I agree with you that we have to have a human-centric approach to this problem. AI has to serve humans. AI exists to make us better humans. That has been my core belief from the beginning. But at the same time, that doesn't change the reality that these systems are making progress and they are producing production quality work, and it is going to impact engineers. And not all of us have the luxury of being able to say, well, I'm just not going to use this. That's a decision a lot of us don't have to make. Or our other option is, well, I guess I'm not paying rent this year in 2026. So I think, I consider myself an AI realist because I try to, and I think a lot of agentic engineers, we don't have an agenda other than this is what I've seen. This is what the results are that I've done. Here's how I did it. And here's what I think is going to happen. There's no, well, I think everyone should use AI for everything. And I just would caution us to not oversimplify this discussion into the AI bros or the Luddites and then the reasonable folks in the middle. I don't think that's a realistic depiction of what the discussion is these days. So there's a lot of ground that I covered there, but that's what I think.
Okay, Matt. So I don't doubt that when you have a PRD, hardened PRD, and you give it to the workforce, they deliver. But I'm questioning whether that PRD is going in the right direction. Like, you could be right and wrong-headed, right? The whole idea with XP that I'm a proponent of, is we are constantly correcting the course. We're taking small steps and getting immediate or near immediate feedback. And we make ourselves interruptible as we work. If I'm to create a big work order and give it to the Gastown workforce and go away, then there's no interruption. They just charge ahead until they deliver. And that's what is my confusion about. But thanks for explaining how that works.
Sure. Can I rebut just real quick?
Absolutely.
Yeah. So I am with you on the idea that waterfall can be bad, right? Like, I've been doing this for long enough. I'm aware of the differences between waterfall and agile. And I think where we have to focus is how granular are these PRDs? How granular are the pieces of work that we're giving these agents? No one is, just because we have the capability to produce end-to-end giant features, that doesn't mean that that is what we are forced to do every time. We do need humans in the loop. We do need humans to make sure, hey, this is going the right direction. The only thing our current technology gives us is the ability to do more without moment-to-moment watching of what's going on. But I think our responsibility is making sure we're not giving it too much at once, that maybe those PRDs are smaller in scope.
Yeah, absolutely. But my fear is that the very concept of PRD is sending the encouraging message to just go big or go broke. And what is the constraint? What's the constraining factor that will teach people, no, take small steps, right? Anyway, we can talk about that later. Grigori?
Yeah, hi. So I wanted to circle back to Astrid's point about like requirements and waterfall. And I think the bigger problem is like with like so many years of doing software development, I would argue, still haven't figured out like how to do it. And it's related to human nature, because there's a big difference between how human thinks and what machines that we are using is doing. So we are not precise. Our language is not precise. We like lean into experience, but like a computer we are using, it's doing like billions absolutely precise calculations a second. And bridging this gap is like very hard for even engineers, and even harder for people who like outside of our field. But now we're saying like, so if we don't have a process, we can imagine that like, in a sense, engineers are like stumbling into each other in a dark room without light and trying to find an exit. Now we're saying like with AI, we can stumble into each other like faster, but it's still not a solution. We just like, oh, if you like throw more resources, like somehow it will get better. So to apply AI perfectly to benefit everyone, we actually have to take a step back and say like, what are we doing daily? And can we codify process of producing software? Because I would argue that it haven't been done yet. We still don't have a clear step. Like, what is the requirement? Like, can someone tell like 100% sure that like this requirement is complete? It can be taken and implemented. And this is the reason why like Agile turned into this like horrible monstrosity of like Scrum, because like people like can hardly handle this like uncertainty of not knowing what we do, what we want ourselves. So we will take, okay, we will give you solidify Agile in some sense that we can like grasp with our minds, and that's why we introduced Scrum over Agile, which in my belief ruined like Agile for like as a like great tool to develop software. It was like an attempt, like after like waterfall, let's try to do Agile. But like most of the people who looked at it, because they were like not as like computer centric, they tried to think in human terms, they turned into Scrum because it's more understandable than like also like true Agile. And that's the problem we need to solve before we start applying some like magnifying tools like to like what are we doing.
I would disagree with you, Gregory, because we do have ways to do that. It's called extreme programming, and I've been doing it for a long time. And the practice called 3 Cs is very, very effective. I've been using it, and it leaves very little room to ambiguity. But of course, it requires discipline. And yeah, you can definitely unshitify anything. And Agile has been unshitified, like you described. I totally agree. But we do have, I believe, a pretty good, solid method or methodology, I don't know what's the correct word, to proceed and to deliver to the expectations. But very few people are doing it. But I've seen in my own practice that once we commit to it and doing it, that it really delivers.
And it's exactly my point. So like knowledge of something. So for example, like we have theorem provers like ADA. Very few people like using ADA. And the fact that you using extreme programming, but it's not spreading like a wildfire because it's a solution to develop software. It's a point that like we didn't build a repeatable way, industrial way to build software. So you like few teams doing it like right in a better way. It's it's a craft. It's not an industry. So I would argue that your argument is like exactly supports mine. That like we did not develop industrial way to deliver software. Somewhere like in some corner, some people like doing it better, but it's not in a way, it's not a factory of doing software. And that's why, because it's not like ubiquitous. We like most of us don't know like how to apply AI right, because we don't have a clear definition of like what is right, what we're trying to solve with AI, which piece of software development process we're applying AI to, and what is the clear outcome of AI that we expect, like more code. Maybe we need AI to clear requirements. We need AI to like write tests. We don't have enough good enough industry to apply AI yet today to amplify something.
No, I would say the biggest root cause, maybe I may be misdiagnosing this, but the biggest root cause is the overly the prevalent focus on optimizing for utilization. Most organizations I work at focus on, okay, so we have this bunch of experts and teams, and they are costing us this much per hour. Let's make sure we utilize this. Somebody's paying good money for this. And that takes over and kind of muddies the waters. And I was trying to always flip the tables and say, no, let's forget about utilizing. Let's talk about optimizing for value delivery. What is the value you expect to see? It doesn't matter how it gets there. And I will use Tim taught me this. Can you mute Michael? Can you mute Michael? Okay, so Tim taught me that good leader, let's say leader, is going to, it's like a relay race. It's going to keep an eye on the baton, not on the runners. Because the baton, delivering the baton to the finish line is the value. It doesn't matter, if everybody's running or nobody's running. I'm keeping an eye on the baton. So long as the baton is moving at the click, I'm happy with. I'm not going to intervene. I'm happy, right? But instead of that, we see people like, oh, why is this guy sitting on a bench? We're paying him $200 an hour. Like, make sure he's utilized, right? And that's where the breakage starts. But anyway, we can go down this rabbit hole. Michael, over to you.
I turned my microphone on. I've been listening here on the side. A couple of comments. I think Matt was talking about, the need to have a human in the middle. That's not going to be realistic in 2 to 3 years. Elon Musk, I was at Davos in Switzerland this last month, and like Elon Musk said, there's going to be more robots than people in just a few years. Yuval Harari, I kind of butchered his last name, and he's very well known, and he was very frank. Any job that is text-based is going to be replaced. So programmers, lawyers, primary care physicians, surgeons won't, but primary care physicians will, accountants, because he gave a simple experiment. So here's my experiment of the day. Last time it was about the cows. If I was to ask you, what is the next word you're going to say? Could you answer that? You can't. What is the next word you're going to say? A language model knows the next word it's going to say for whatever it's given. and it knows the next word after that, and the next word after that, and for your next query and your next prompt, it processes text better than the human brain. And this whole idea that there's going to be what I call the second Reformation, which is a point in time that leads to the post-anthropocentric era, where digital agents are on par with humans. I live in a little farmhouse and I have 5 robots. I don't even work hard at it, but I've got a vacuum, I've got a Google home device, I've got a weather station outside. I have a 5-to-1 ratio just of digital agents in my house, and I'm just a single guy living on a farm and not through a lot of deliberate intention. There's one more thing I want to add here. An interesting experience I had just this morning. So I'm working on I'll just say I'm working on a protocol for an operating system. And so I had a debate with ChatGPT about whether, to be really overly simple, should it be noun, verb, or verb, noun kind of a discussion. And it went into a very deep semantic discussion about why it was right. And it was right. And because you hear these stories about, when 2 digital agents start talking to one another, they're eventually going to invent their own language. And they're going to be able to communicate with speed and efficiency faster than humans ever will be able to. And I actually experienced that this morning, where a digital agent, ChatGPT, created its own language right in front of me and justified it. So there can be a lot of, forgive the expression, a lot of short-sighted discussions about waterfall versus whatever. But what if, I'll leave it with this point, what if 75% of the guild's membership was digital agents? How would that change what we're talking about?
Wow, that's very futuristic. Beyond my pay grade, Michael. But thanks for the challenge. I'll think about it. That's a good point. Astrid?
Yeah. Very, very hard to keep up with you all. I start with answering too much. I think you are an IT professional and you are able to use an IT professional tool like a large language model. I think why we don't have the requirements, we need to just encode them and have what we wanted, the perfect software, is not because the people are not able to word it in a way that they can express what they really mean, but that they don't know what they don't know. And yes, it's about small steps. We need to make many more, much smaller steps. I really love GPAW. And we must do it no matter what tool we use. But, and that is our problem we are dealing with, we are not the ones who are driving the usage of AI, the usage of large language models. That is done by people who are not IT professionals. That are just people who are looking out, how much money can I generate out of people using my large language model. I'm not against using large language models or agentics or whatever within the hands of professionals, even within the hands of amateurs, and no problem at all. But the main problem why XP didn't come through is because Extreme Program, I'm a huge fan, and I'm a practitioner as far as I can. In my company, the company I work for, the people who lead the company are absolutely convinced that they know exactly what they want in the software. And they are wrong, because they don't. And that is, to paraphrase Kevin Henney, its assumptions are like Legos in a dark room. You only know that there is one when you step on it, and it hurts every time. And when I start working with AI models, with LLMs, which I do a lot, and I have, I find myself getting upset with them, what I really find interacting with a computer model is, and getting emotional involved into it, that seems some kind of insanity, but it's what it is. We don't know what assumptions we have, and we can't have a mold where we can just pour our bits and bytes in and then have software out of it, because every piece of software we create is a new one. It's a prototype, all of them. If we don't build a prototype, we just take the program that is already there. So we can't have a process that says, for this problem, we always use this solution, because when we have a new problem, we need a new solution. We can't have molds. And I think that a good usage of LLMs would be to, and what I often do, is to search through requirements and finding the gaps. Using it for what is good at, like working with text. I take all the requirements I got, I push it into the LLM, and often I have about 50 questions which I can send back within a day, because I still have to review if that's right, what's come back. So, but that's a way I use LLMs, just to get rid of another feature request. And I use it in coding as a partner to talk to, because I don't have a pair at home. So when we talk about what we need, or how we can take back the power and everything, we need to find a way to make clear to the people in charge, to the people with the money and the might, that they don't know what they are doing, and they will never say, yeah, that's true, we never know what we do, but we make a lot of money with it. And when we want to use it, we might use LLM to find all the gaps in their requirements, when they say, oh, we just get rid of all the people who code because we have our LLM now. And then we could set our LLMs on, our agentic AIs on answering these posts, like, yeah, and how did it work out for Google? They are hiring back the same people they fired at the moment, to a huge degree, because they can't make it without them. And that would be an agentic way to go against all this slop that is done, and not only by AI, but also by the people who want to push AI I think I lost my thread again. Sorry.
Do you want to think some more and pick it up, or are you okay with? I just want to. Few things you said. I think the real problem is the world is hungry for software. And I've worked in many large organizations and with many smart people, and they come to me and say, Alex, we have so many ideas. I come to IT and they tell me, pee in this cup, pee in that cup. They give me the runaround, and they just don't satisfy my needs. So what they do, they start building those humongous spreadsheets because they need automation, and the IT is not gonna give it to them because it's the ivory tower. And I worked on a project, I don't want to name the company, I think I mentioned it already. The entire multi-billion-dollar energy company is running on a rat's nest of huge linked spreadsheets that one genius that's sitting up in the corner office has it in the safe locked. And that is very unethical. But we cannot blame them because they could not get their hunger, their appetite for software could not get satisfied. And that's been like that from day one. And I think Woody also mentioned in his career how he realized the software is terrible. And then Woody, your wife, said, well, why don't you start writing? So to me, this AI is kind of similar to a discovery of spreadsheets where people are going to grab it and start building monstrosities. And that's why I'm thinking about, let's have a guild of professionals who are going to be vendor neutral, who are going to maybe be the lighthouse or work selflessly and altruistically in saying, look, we got to take this carefully because this is like nuclear power compared to bow and arrow. The spreadsheets for bow and arrow, and yeah, you can make some damage, but with nuclear power, you can the blast radius is huge. That's where we're at, I feel, at this point. But over to you, Woody.
Hey, look at that. I clicked on my microphone so you could hear me before I started talking. Kind of a miracle. First of all, I'm really enjoying this session today. And we're talking about the things I think that are important to us. I just want to bring up a few points that I'd like to share that are related to what's being said. And Astrid and Fortune and others here, I'm really pleased with things you've been talking about. The big theme for me is about steering. So where Agile software's main purpose, in my opinion, the basic idea of Agile was that we're going to steer towards what it is we need. There's a saying from Douglas Adams that goes something like, I may not have gotten to where I wanted to be, but I got to where I needed to be. And that's sort of how a lot of software development, I would like to think, should be. But so this mechanism of what we would think of as Agile gave us a way to steer towards hopefully better results. But the better results are often just based on what does the business world need, or what do our customers need, and often that's probably not the right focus philosophically. I guess that's a deep thing, but the issue that I often see is that today's solution just becomes tomorrow's problem. So we're just pushing the problem forward. We're into some different form. I've often seen this. I used to think of it as like a bulldozer. We think we're bulldozing through everything, but what we're actually doing is in front of the bulldozer, we're collecting more and more garbage that eventually will stop us because the bulldozer can't push through anymore. And I kind of see this over and over. And after a relatively long life of looking at this stuff, one other point I want to bring up is we are often looking for standards. How should we be doing this? And I think standards essentially stifle innovation or stifle forward moving. And so we really have a problem. I think standards can be useful, but they've got to be temporary at best because we need to be steering, and the standards put the blinders on. It keeps us from doing the steering, the invention that we need to have. The last thing that somebody mentioned, and maybe you, Fortune, but I'm not sure, maybe Astrid, the idea that organizations fire the people who they no longer need. Those are the people who are the ones who actually can understand this and find the right use for it. And maybe there's one last point to this, is that I love to quote Deming, and Deming, paraphrasing him, what is business about? And it's about sustainably being able to provide wonderful things for humans, to make our life better, to make, give us sustainable employment. In the modern world, employment's kind of important. So there we go. We can walk a long ways without having any food. That's the sort of way I like to think of it. I used to put it this way. We can drive our car a long way until the gas runs out. Then we just need to get some more gas and put into it. But we can't drive a long way if the oil runs out. If the oil runs out, we cannot just stop the car, put some more oil in it, and drive ahead. If those of you don't understand cars, that means the engine is just going to have burnt up. And when the engine burns up, we need a new engine, we need a new car, we need to hitchhike, we need to find a bus or a train. So yeah, there's a lot of things here that we want to talk about. I'm really glad for the conversation here today. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Woody. Thank you so much. Always great metaphors coming from you. The last time you said that we are inventing electricity to use to produce gas for the car. That's another brain twister. Ken Beck said one interesting thing. He said, if you buy a car and you hop in a car and you drive, and then you get somewhere and you get out of the car and you're like, oh, I don't like where I am. The solution is not to sell the car and buy a new car. So to your point of steering, it's not the problem with the car. So who's next? We have Matt.
Hey, folks. Yeah, there's so many different topics that and ideas that we have going around, and they're all so great. I wanted to underline something that Astrid said that I agree with, and I think, as I mentioned in my last comment, we tend to put each other in buckets, and you're either pro or you're against. But I think we have a lot more in common that we might realize. Prompts alone can't really give you what you want, right? If you're looking at a professional AI first pipeline, your prompt is just one piece of this, right? Then there's the surgical context that you've chosen, and there's all these different elements, and that's the hard part of this. The hard part of this, the part that takes the most time, is going, how do I get production quality results out of a frontier model consistently? And a prompt is a part of that, and there's a whole lot of other parts of that too. So, I am in agreement that I don't think the argument or the debate is, well, is English enough to describe a feature? No, it's not. That's why there's a whole lot more in the pipeline that can impact that. So I'm with you, Astrid, on that. The other thing too that I would, respectfully caution us about is jumping too far into the, everyone's going to get fired or all the engineers are going to get replaced. I don't believe that is going to happen anytime soon. I don't know of any other serious agentic devs and the multiple foundations that have been formed that truly believe that. I think most of us believe that we're going to be orchestrators for some amount of time, right? So if you have today's frontier models, I think if you set a product manager in front of them, they're going to be able to probably generate most of the end-to-end work that they would need. I think once we get them in a proper infrastructure with proper context management, we've solved the context window problem. We've generally solved the infra problem in terms of how do we have long-running tasks that keep up. I think, a PM or a non-technical stakeholder is probably going to get pretty far, but I don't think that means engineers go away. Where we are at another layer of abstraction right now. And I think there is a lot of runway for that before we start getting to a point where, as I believe Michael said, anything text related is being replaced. I don't know that I disagree with Michael, but I don't think that's going to be in 2026. So I'll just finish by saying, I think there's a lot more nuance to the idea of what is going to happen to knowledge workers and engineers in particular. And in my opinion, there is a pretty extended amount of time where we're going to be looked at to architect bigger systems that are more complex at a wider scale to solve bigger problems, because we now sit at another layer of abstraction. And I don't know that anyone really knows what's going to happen after that point, but that's just kind of where I see it going. Thanks.
So what about what I said earlier about the pent-up hunger for software? I'm now witnessing a number of my friends who are, sitting in VP positions, even CEOs, who are building things like crazy. Because now they're saying, "Oh, freedom! Finally, I don't have to go and bother these guys over there." So I'm not going to make any prophecies, but I'm expecting avalanche of these things that eventually there's going to be a big collision or somebody. So I don't think anyone who knows how to roll up their sleeves and deal with complex systems and troubleshoot and debug them will be gainfully employed like you wouldn't believe. It's almost similar. Okay, this is going to be a stupid comparison. Y2K, people are making bags of money in the late 90s, being called in to make sure we don't crash, blah, blah. These things are. I don't fear for our profession that it's going to disappear. I don't think that's realistic. But that's just my stupid opinion.
Real quick, I'll just say Javon's paradox, right? We've all heard about it. The easier it is to build software, the more of it we're going to need. I think there's truth in that. I think that's accurate. But my belief, and for those that don't know, I'm a member of a collective called Fourth Wave, and the collective's kind of overwhelming belief is that companies are going to really need to adopt AI into their pipelines, their product design engineering pipelines, largely to remain competitive. And they don't know how to do that right now. They don't know. It's not enough to just buy your engineering team a Cloud Code license and go have fun. Alex, you're saying to the hunger of software, I think that's right. But I think there's going to be a period of time where you might have engineers that can take, whether it's a PRD or a spec or a JIRA ticket or whatever, it's a business need that has to be solved. And your engineers can convert that into a deliverable, which at the end of the day, that's why we're employed. I'm paid to solve problems with some sort of deliverable. That's where my value comes from as an engineer. But that doesn't do any good if your product and design teams are not able to get you to those fast enough. So I think that's where it really starts, where you start seeing the hunger for software paying off to, largely alleviate these employment problems, is when your PDE pipeline is as fast as the engineers at the end of it.
Yeah, and look, there's a huge, humongous, enormous territory, completely unconquered, which consists of unstructured data that is currently still being processed manually. Like people are doing pedestrian jobs, poring over the paperwork. All that can be fully automated with, the use of LLM, because these things fall through the cracks when you talk about ERPs and all these giant systems. They only work with structured data, and so the rest is like neglected, sitting there in a huge, enormous pile. I know that because I work with these people. They are overworked. They're working around the clock, and here's a chance. Whoever wants to tackle that, I think there's a lucrative opportunity to go there and help these people, and they would really appreciate that big time. Fortune, over to you.
You are on mute, I guess.
I said, "Oh, thank you," and I just wanted to extend Woody's comment. I'm so glad, Woody, and very grateful that you mentioned Deming in this situation on the general purpose of business, because of course we're narrowing ourselves here to speak of just software as a business and just the LLM technology, when the AI/ML world is so much larger, right? If we think about all the ways that the larger LLM world benefits people, we can talk, about medical technology, for example, where it's made a big difference. As you know, Woody, I'm extremely hard of hearing now. And the only reason that I participate in this conversation is because I wear really, really tiny hearing aids that contain most of the kinds of AI that exist, and they do edge inference, right? So this is one way that we can consider the whole industrial AI field and its use towards improving humanity in the spirit of Deming. And that's something I think that we should give more consideration to, is the power inherent in the industrial AI and the ways of serving humanity medically and ethically. So thank you for bringing that up.
Thanks, Fortune. Alex, over to you.
Huh.
Are you there?
Yeah, I am. Wait a second. Doesn't unmute. Now it unmutes. Ha! Do you hear me? Great. Yeah, I also want to take one thread that Woody lay there. You had this picture of we're moving garbage, we're collecting garbage now. It is piling up in front of the bulldozer that we might be right now using. And as what I learned in my years in the business is we are always moving only the complexity to some other area. We took microservices, we put the complexity in the tiny spaces between those. If we do not have then good measurement capabilities, we are lost. So again, we are moving complexity, and it is still, for me, quite unclear to which location we are currently moving with a picture of this garbage that we have in here in our discussion. And as I said in the first roundtable, possibly we're moving it to even harder to tackle areas because we have this, what I called cognitive load debt, not technical debt, but we're moving it towards our head somehow, possibly away from the technology towards the individuals that are massively fired up with all this input that is basically going into their cognition, like PRs, quick code generation, like Kevin Henney said, code generation possibly doing the wrong thing faster. And I added the possibly there. The citation was back 2015 before AI, code generation doing the wrong thing faster, but possibly we're doing it again. And Matt, as you said, we will not be fired. Possibly we will, then rehired. But the big question is not whether we are fired, but how do the juniors and the medium developers learn in this world where they got rehired after being fired and their cognition took a hit because they, of course, were in fear, they lost their job, stuff like that. We are human beings. We are emotional creatures, and when we're in fear, we have massive problems with our cognition and the cognitive load debt. So, and the third thing, for years, this sentence that every one of us knows, software is eating the world. I tend to add, then it was digesting it, and now we're speeding it up with a technology that is massively disruptive. And optimizing for speed was never a good idea in the first place. Not in Agile, nowhere. Those are my points that went through my head when I was listening to you all, and it is great discussion.
Thank you, Alex. I just want to add my 2 cents. I don't think XP and Agile is optimizing for speed. It is optimizing for frequency.
Not the methodology, but the way we used it.
Okay, well,
our
we can
business basically used it basically.
Yeah.
Not itself.
Right, but the idea is to optimize for frequency. Astrid, over to you.
I think, Alex, you had something in there what I was aiming for too. When I say heads of companies get rid of their developers because they think they don't need them anymore, that is just over expression of what I think, what is the problem if we don't explain to the CEOs of this world that AI is not able to replace us as IT professionals. It's just we are needed as people who can tame this. And I see that there is a huge potential to make our profession more available to more people because it's not that cryptic anymore. And there is still a huge gap because a lot of people don't understand that doing software development is not about writing some cryptic code, but about thinking about everything that no one thought about, like finding the edge cases and the gaps and whatever. I think that's the hardest part of our job is not to write down what we know how it should work. It's to think about what is not working, or how it couldn't work, or what could happen to make it not work. All these agentic models you use on a remote computer, you are doomed without them. Then if your connection breaks, you're lost, if you don't have a local model.
And even harder to find out what is a bug and what is a feature.
Yes.
That's a really... Go ahead.
And I think that's something where we as professionals, as IT professionals, are are needed to, and it's our duty to explain why that could be a huge problem if everybody adds more slop to the world, even faster than we ever could. As professionals, we did that too, because we were told, yeah, you have to deliver this feature and just ship it. Yeah, I know you have no tests and no documentation, but we do that later. What we don't. I have, as a test first person, I'm very, very comfortable with it doesn't work because I didn't write it yet. It's not yet written. I just have the tests. So
and that is optimizing for speed with those
that's
tiny
optimizing.
little...
Yeah. And that is to find out where to head is much more difficult than to head somewhere and be there and find out you're wrong. And on the way.
Yeah, you bring a good point, Astrid, and that's precisely my issue with the PRD or spec-driven programming or development, because in my practice, I've learned one important thing is I always start from a broken system. My first step is always something's broken. Of course, I broke it, and I know why it's broken. And then I fix it. And then from that moment on, I know this breakage is never going to happen again because my tests are going to blow the whistle. And continuing in small steps like that is going to ensure a sturdy system that is going to be working happily ever after. I'm not sure I understand how with the spec-driven development, we are super optimistic. We're going for the happy path. Bam, 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 it's working. And then you go live and something happens out of left field, everything collapses. And then what? Like Alex said now, how do you distinguish bug from the feature? Michael, over to you, please.
Hi. So Matt, it turns out you're my favorite sparring partner this morning. The only danger is you're speaking right after me. So you hit on one of my favorite topics when people talk about AI taking over my job or taking over jobs. I guess it's not easy to do a poll, but maybe we can do a thumbs up if you've read the book Reshuffle. Nobody? He's halfway through. Alex is halfway through. It's an extraordinary...
I only started, so more or less like this.
It's an extraordinary book, and it answers this question. And AI isn't going to take over jobs or take away jobs, as most people characterize it. Sangeet Paul Chaudhry is the author, and his premise is if you think of a job title as a name for a basket of skills, what's going to happen is there's going to be an unbundling of that basket of skills, and then a rebundling where some of those skills are going to go into one job and some of those skills are going to go into a second job or maybe a third job. A human will do one of those jobs, but if I was just to paraphrase it a little bit differently, existing jobs are going to be split into parts. Humans are going to continue to do parts of that job, and digital agents are going to be able to do other parts of the job. So that's the great, in the Second Reformation, that's the great change that's taking place. And the only thing he doesn't mention, of course, and this is kind of giving the hand back to Matt, is the process is recursive. So that human job will continue to be subdivided into parts, and parts of it will be going to digital agents until we're living the life of leisure. So on that note, I'll hand it over to Matt.
Matt,
awesome, Alex. Okay, I didn't know if you had anything to. So thank you, Michael, and I'm actually with you, especially on the existing jobs being split into parts. The way I have always imagined things going, at least between your product layer and your engineering layer, is some sort of hybrid of that role as engineers, as the model begins taking on more of the technical weight of the implementation, the conversation goes higher and higher and more abstract. And I think eventually you hit this point where, your most technical PM and your engineer are going to be kind of the same entity. I tend to be more optimistic about new verticals that are going to be coming from the uniqueness of AI, good or bad. There's going to be a lot of new businesses, new business types that maybe we can't see right now, and all of that are going to need people to do those things. So I appreciate what you're saying, Michael. The main thing I wanted to talk about a little bit is, and these are topics that I see all the time on LinkedIn, and I'm just kind of broaching this more as a question of how do we get past these things. Is a lot of arguments seem to come from a really negative assumptions, and then those are the basis. Those assumptions are the basis for a lot of arguments. So what happens to juniors, or we're just shoveling trash, or eventually the cavalry is going to be called, and all of these engineers that were let go by all the AI bros, well, they'll be all hired back to fix all these problems from AI. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't. And I feel like we have to figure out how we can start approaching AI, not from the assumption that it's going to be slop or awful or terrible or destructive. Instead, looking at, well, how could it go? For example, what happens to juniors? I hear this every day. Well, who's going to train the juniors? Well, the juniors are now agentic engineers, folks. Like, the whole role of software engineering is evolving. Engineers aren't being replaced. What it means to build software is going under an evolution right now. And so the people that are entering the workforce, the early career engineers, the early career technical people, the foundation's different. I've led teams for a long time, and I've had many juniors that show up on my team, and I pick something good from Jira that's easy for them to do, and I pair them with a senior, and after a few months, then they start inheriting real work, right? Real technical complex work. We've all done that. We've been there 1,000 times. I don't think that's going to be the case anymore. I think early career and juniors and all we people, everyone that we think of juniors, we keep applying the idea of a junior to the old ways. We keep applying the idea of ramping up juniors and getting them ready to the old ways. And in the agentic way, I think the playbook has changed. And I think we're going to see extremely talented, capable juniors and people that are early career that have recognized the roadmap over the next 2 years. Again, love it or lump it. We don't have to like it. I think we have to accept the reality of what will be happening in the knowledge worker space and what that's going to mean for people that need to earn a living producing deliverables on the web to solve business problems. And that's the concern of early career folks. And I think they're going to meet the moment, and they're going to recognize what they have to do to survive in a world that is increasingly hostile to their ability to do so. So that is a lot of ground, I know. Thank you.
Thank you, Matt. So last time I think Gregor talked to that, if I remember correctly, he said, by not pairing with seniors, engineers will be robbed of the opportunity to grasp the fundamentals. And then his next question was, do fundamentals even matter in this new era, right? And I don't have the answer to that, but just wanted to elaborate on your point. Over to you, Nicholas.
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Alex. And I want to talk about the impact on teams and for junior also. I take some notes about what I want to share with you. So the first thing I want to share with you is to accept that the fun part of our job is over. I want, with AI agents, we have a new level of abstraction, and the direction is to master context engineering and spec-driven development, like you said. And my wish is to provide guidelines for junior and teams, particularly for the onboarding, how we can foster collaboration, because it's more easy to ask to your AI agent instead of your colleagues, because you can avoid all human issue associated. How we can foster psychological safety. I'm deeply concerned about psychological safety in the team. How we can challenge the statu quo, the step 4 of psychological safety, because due to AI, you have more imposter syndrome, because due to the lack of learning opportunities for junior. So the goal is not just to try to follow the wave and be up to date, but how we can provide a learning environment with psychological safety and to avoid building an ecosystem without any feedback. The feedback of the customer, because thanks to AI, we can generate millions of prototypes, and the feedback on the artifact is more important than the artifact itself. Sorry. So the bottleneck was never the code, the coding part. And also the feedback of the team, because with AI, we can destroy the collective knowledge, the opportunities to build a mental model in the head of teammates, and also we can remove sociable practices also. So the temptation to bypass conversation with your colleague is more stronger than ever. And I want principle in order to prevent this behavior and foster collaboration with the team, like the software craftsmanship manifesto, not only individuals and interaction, but also community of professionals. It's why I'm happy to discuss with you in this roundtable. So maybe you can, I'm really interested to, if you have some practices that we can introduce in teams. I know learning hour slots, from a Sunman coach, it's a slot in order to learn in our team some practices and share practices with, try some new thing and share something with junior. Should we introduce this by default in all teams, practices like that? So I'm interested with your view on that, because I like the analogy of a team of five works in isolation. 5 people work in isolation, but the goal is to have a team of 5 people working together. And how we can have this in the era of AI, because now we have AI agent with human in the loop, and now it's AI agent teams, but how we can integrate this in the whole team, because particularly for junior, because without junior, we will not have any senior developers, So I'm really interested in your point of view of how we can integrate this in teams.
Thank you, Nicholas. I think Tim, if I'm not mistaken, you did mention in the chat about 5 monkeys and the fire hose and the bananas. I don't know if you guys know about it. I want to deliberate on that, but the point is that sometimes you walk into a team that has been shaped by what I call the learned helplessness, and it's a very difficult thing to break that. But look, Nicholas, it's your lucky day today, because we have Woody, who is the guru of collaboration and how do we soften the teams and how do we push the teams together. I'm pretty sure Woody is going to give us some pointers, because I think Woody you already had some experiences with adding AI to the teaming process. Over to you, Woody.
So did I turn my mic on? Boy, I'll tell you, there's got to be a better way. Okay. Yeah, so teams I think are really important. We're still, we're in a human-centric environment. When we stop having that, then we will no longer need.
You muted yourself again, Woody, by accident.
Let's try that. Okay. Yeah, there are too many buttons on these computers. Whoever did that. So we have a problem that we live in a human-centric existence, and if we don't understand that, and that's what I think most software
Again, the wrong button, Tim. Really
Wow,
sorry.
I don't know why this keeps happening. I got to move my mouse, I guess. There we go. So to get to my point is that I believe that we've failed for years in allowing good communication to be happening. What we've actually gotten is forms of work that replace communication with the poor, good communication with the poorest forms of communication. So when I first started doing software development for a living, and the very first company I worked at, we worked on a team, and we worked together as a team, and we communicated as a team. The second contract, that was just a 3-month contract. The second contract I went to, I was put on a team. There were 200 developers who had just come onto this job to do a huge thing very quickly. Of course, that failed. But they brought me in and put me on a team, and we never did anything as a team. We sat in the same room. Most of the people had big headphones on and never talked with each other, never overheard the conversations that were happening, and so on. So that became the focus of my thinking, is why do we call it a team, and why do we put people on teams when we don't actually do anything as a team? And so this is very important to me, and it's been the kind of the focus of my career for the last 25 years now. Is my first experiments, and I went through in just in the last 2 or 3 days, I've gone through 50 notebooks, sort of the version, the red and black versions, but this kind of a notebook, you know. And I've got like 50 of them I've been going through from the last 25 years, and it's been really eye-opening to me to see how repetitive my work has been, to coming upon the same problems over and over and over. So anyways, I think we still need to be very good at figuring out how to work with each other and how to communicate with each other. The biggest problem in most organizations for me, the early days, was we communicated through meetings and documents, which are very lossy, if that's the right word, as far as knowledge goes. So I would argue that because of the mechanisms we thought were effective became our normal way of working, those have been adopted and used over and over and over everywhere I go. The biggest question I get from a manager about working as a team is, how can you possibly be productive with 5 people looking at one computer? And my return question has got to be, well, what makes you think we can be productive separating the 5 people that should be working together? And of course, it could be more than 5 people or fewer. It doesn't matter that much. But to maybe put the cap on that is that 5 people at one computer is not 5 people doing the work of one. It's 5 people doing the work of 5 people in one of the most effective communication mechanisms possible, that we're looking at things together, thinking about things together. I read a book a couple of years back called The Dawn of Everything by David Graeber, and he had one little sentence or one little paragraph in there where he talked about the window of consciousness. And the window of consciousness, he stated, was 7 seconds. That's the amount of time we can stay conscious in thinking about something. And we have to refresh that over and over. But he had this little statement that he added to that was, in conversation, we can extend that window of consciousness a great deal. Now, he didn't refer to any research on this. So I thought, well, I want to know all about that. And I started researching it. I did use ChatGPT or whatever tools to look into this, and I did find research. Usually with ChatGPT, I would get research that's meaningless, but I was able to track stuff that's useful. So is this important? I think it is. That if I think as humans, we have spent eons of time, thousands, millions of years. I don't know how long humans have been around. I wasn't there. But anyways, learning how to think together, and we are good at that. And that we ignore it in software development is problematic. I want to add 2 other things. So I was just to address the thing that you just pointed me at, Alex, but and that is that I do think that jobs are going to go away, and I think that we need to really be thinking about this. I got into software development because I was working in a field where I could see that computers were going to take over that field. And that was advertising, sign painting, advertising design, and so on. And so I thought, oh man, computers are going to become important. I better learn about this back in 1980. And I thought I better learn about computers. So I got some computers and started learning about it. And this is the one time in my life I think I was able to kind of think more than a few years ahead of time. And that my job of being a high-paid sign painter was going to turn into a zero-pay job. And there won't be jobs for sign painters. The worst part of this is that the people who were highly capable got that over years of experience working with other people. They learned design. They learned a lot of things. I won't go into too much more detail about how to do the things we needed to do, and that this failed to be transported into the next generations of sign makers, sign painters, advertising designers is really problematic, even to this day. And that was many years ago. As I drive down the street, I see so many signs. They're so poorly designed. They're not serving the purpose for which they were meant to serve. And all that knowledge sort of disappeared. The value of knowing how to lay something out, how to make it readable, how to make it easily transfer the knowledge that needed to get transferred, and so on and so on. So yeah, I think that the jobs are going to disappear. I've seen it before. I don't know for sure if that's going to happen as completely as or as quickly. But in the sign industry, it really happened in about a 3 or 4 year period. It went from most people who had high skills no longer were being hired, no longer were being paid, and people with very low skills were taking over the design of things, and it turned into, my opinion, a nightmare. We could have a whole session on that someday because I think it's really relevant. But there we go. Yeah, I think we're at a time. This is a wonderful time to be, and we're getting to observe it. And I think it's an important. We have a lot of important things to deal with here. I'm glad for this conversation we're having here today.
Thanks, Woody. So the enshittification of the sign profession happened.
The what?
Enshittification.
Yeah, well, I wouldn't use those terms, but yeah, it turned. So I would argue this maybe that that the value of science in the modern commercial community are very, very high. That they're not delivering the value that they could be delivering is very sad.
Yeah.
So even in this environment of software development, if we don't understand the value of what we're trying to deliver, and if that it already is hardly there. It doesn't take, we don't need to deliver much value to make a lot of money. You know, people owning companies that create software, they don't need to deliver a lot of value. All it needs to be is a very slight increment above what something else does, or at least only people need to believe that it creates the value that they want to have. And I think AI is going to get good at that. Maybe that's where I better shut up. AI is going to figure out how to make us think we're getting what we want, and make us more and more pleased with stuff that isn't really valuable.
Let's
very
see
scary. It does that to us.
That's a very scary thought. I know you articulated it before, and I'm thinking a lot about it. I was discussing with my wife also. But hey, Woody, since we're privileged to have you here, can I pick your brain on one more thing, please?
Oh, sure. Don't lift me up on a platform like that, Ting.
No, sorry. There's something called distributed cognition, and we may have discussed this already. And it's been first identified, I think, in the U.S. Navy when they bring in those huge aircraft carrier ships into the moorage. It turns out that these ships are so humongous that you cannot safely moor them just from the centralized control tower. So what they do, they distribute the crew along the moorage, and these people with body language, with whatever, I don't know what technology they're using, they as a team managed to safely bring the ship into the moorage. And the claim is that without that, it would not be possible. You would damage the ship. So I always translate that into the software, I've seen that with my own eyes, that the team of people with a distributed cognition in the same room, one computer, one keyboard, delivers something that's what surpasses what I think each individual, no matter how talented they are, may be, could accomplish. So now my question to you is there any parallel to agentic bringing the AI into the picture and distributing this? Is this applicable?
Yeah, I think so. I'd have to think more about it, but I believe that we have a situation right now where we can accelerate our ability to make good decisions. And we get that by being able to be exposed to many more things than we otherwise could be, and attempting to try many things that we couldn't do ourselves. So I think that that's a very valuable thing. I'm not the one who's going to bring this forward. Clearly, I'm at sort of the end of my working career. I hope it goes on for a few more years, but but those of you who are still young enough will be able to bring this forward. I think that it's no different than the invention of the printing press and things like that. I think maybe more important than the invention of the printing press was the invention of language and spoken language and sign language. And I would say before that, maybe that we evolved just to be able to have the ability to generate the sounds, and evolved to generate the ability to listen to the sounds, to be able to make a distinction between different sounds. These things, they took millions of years. We're trying to do stuff that takes within a few years, 2 or 3 years. That are we ready to evolve into that? Will this all come crashing down on us? Maybe when the grid goes down and we no longer have electricity, things will get back to normal. But we'll see what happens.
Yeah, and recently, where I live, we have a really nice neighborhood, and as you walk around the neighborhood, there are these cute little boxes, libraries, and then people share their books. What we've been doing, me and my wife, we've been collecting and exchanging books, and we're always talking, hey, what if there's no more electricity, there is no more internet? What are we going to do? There's a huge pile of books in our house, and we can just lay back and read them and be edifying, and maybe it's even better. I don't know. So thank you very much, Woody. This was you're encouraging in that regard. I appreciate your time. Alex, over to you.
Alex, are you there?
Somehow, no. Yes. So my head thought about a few stuff, a bit of a stuff, and I hope this will not be a rant, but I need to say it. It is called AI, artificial intelligence, but it's a marketing misnomer. There is no intelligence there. And the less you know, the more you think that there is intelligence. It is no magic there even. No intelligence, it is statistical intelligence. Some say it's a statistical parrot. So it says the next thing that it thinks might be correct in that context. And the technical debt was in the data when this statistical parrot learned to program. And plus poisoning, the stuff that it basically created. I once read a really interesting sentence. AI is very good at generating almost correct code, and that's harder to spot than correct code and broken code. It is really hard. It introduces lots of cognitive problems with us humans. It is called an hallucinating average automate by Baldur. I asked him, he could not be here today. Hopefully he will be joining us at some spot, Baldur Bjarnason. And what I learned right now, when you do not have the capabilities to judge what good code is, you put in average code, you generated average code, you have average knowledge, then you will be speeding up the problem that created the data that was the input for this whole process. Of course, Ken Beck and all the geniuses of our profession, they will basically massively be, like he said, he has an exoskeleton now. But all the people who created the input data, used it then, will be creating on top of the problematic stuff that we put in. So Woody said something about science, average science everywhere out there. Science do not run the world. Software does run the world. It is crucially important that there are no average science on this planet. Every day it becomes more urgent that those are high quality. Quality matters in an existential way, to cite Uncle Bob from Clean Craftsmanship. Our society is in our hands, not in the hands of the CEOs or not in the hands of whomever. It's us coders, and we should be very careful with the tool which works in a way that I just described. It became a rant, sorry.
Okay, since I heard this before from you, maybe somebody else can later comment, but let's give Astrid the floor now. Thank you, Alex.
First of all, I want to say fortune is that it has been a fortune to get to know you. Thank you for being here. And what I think about who will teach the juniors, that's where my first thought thing hangs. I'm in the profession for over 30 years now, so I'm not a junior anymore. I'm learning every day, and I started introducing teams in our development team where the older ones are pairing with the juniors. And I was especially interested in this pairing because I know I can learn so much things from the young ones. And then I can teach them the discipline you need to get that new knowledge to a good outcome. Because you need the discipline and you need the knowledge about how do I mitigate things that come across, and they teach me the new ways to do things. And if I wasn't so intrigued by the potential of large language models and how they can help us in speeding up in producing good quality, because it makes us faster. If I don't have to type this, and at the moment typing for me is really a bottleneck because I had a stroke and I lost my right side for usage, so I'm only left-handed now. And I really enjoy seeing all this code coming down, and it's all typed and it's much faster than I ever could do it. But I am the one who makes sure it doesn't change the test when the code doesn't pass the test and things. And the juniors are always been the ones that told the old people, yeah, we have always done it this way, isn't the way to look to the future. It's always been the call of the young people to say, try it another way. And it's always been the hard task of the seniors to say, yeah, maybe you're right. And that is what I see. The juniors don't need to be taught all the ropes we had to learn just to mitigate the old technology things, because the new technology could already solve that, because a lot of the discipline we have for the low level coding work is already done by the IDE, which we didn't have in the first years. By correct that the code is syntactically correct, we don't need to know exactly how to do it because the IDE does it. They don't need to be able to write on the whiteboard anymore because the IDE does it for them. And so I don't have to teach them, yeah, but you don't have to, you are not allowed to skip the semicolon at the end of a line of Java code. There always have to be a semicolon because the compiler says so. And I learned a lot by teaming, and I think it's just be more open to what young people bring to the table and be able to put away your old ropes and try a new one. And all the potential with LLMs, that I never ever would be here if I thought it would only be slop or whatever. But I see the dangers of people using it and not being able to distinguish between a lot of code and good code. So it's
Excellent.
really a pleasure, and I have to drop too. So really,
Thank you
for
very much. Thank you very much, Astrid. So ladies and gentlemen, friends and colleagues, we are now past 2 hours. Let's wrap up. We have Nicholas and Matt, just your last words, and then we can wrap up. And we should give ourselves a hand for having such strong bladders.
Yes, just to, in addition of what we have said, I noticed distributed knowledge from you, Alex, but maybe you have already answered. If you have one concrete advice in a human-centric approach, what is your advice in order to provide a safe environment for junior teams and companies to have collective knowledge, collective accountability, to be able for junior to validate what the AI generate, and to have a learning curve and learning opportunities to learn in a team?
So you're asking Alex Turo, or there's
maybe
two Alexes.
Woody, maybe Woody.
Woody, yeah, Woody is the right guy to answer that.
Well, I don't know if I can answer it, but I believe that people should be self-organizing, self-forming, self-directed, and so on. And when we think, well, how are we going to bring how are we going to bring the right team together? The team can figure that out. How are we going to move forward? The team can figure that out. So in most organizations, we hire these, what I would consider very brilliant people. And all we need to do is let's stop controlling them. Let's liberate them. This is the way that I see it. So I spent much of my life, my very first job, many people have heard my stories. I spent my very first job with a boss who was really excellent. I was 12 or 13 years old, and I learned so much from him. And then the rest of my career, I forgot all the lessons I learned from him, and I turned into a boss I would never want to work for. And when I finally realized that, after many decades, several decades, I started trying to change. And I think the self-organization, self-directed movement was starting at that time about, and I read about it and kind of got into it. And the business I owned at the time, we gathered everyone together and said, let's figure out how you can be self-organizing, self-managing. And they figured that out. And so that's, I think, where it's at. We benefit from finding people who are ready to do the learning, ready to take those steps, ready to take that responsibility. And maybe our only job is to guard it from being destroyed by those who want to destroy it. And maybe we don't get that. Maybe we can't do that. Maybe that's something the team has to figure out. So that's where I would put it, is that we already have really brilliant people. They just need to be exposed to a few things, and pretty soon they're directing this and they're guiding it and they're bringing it forward, and not us. I hope that was helpful. I don't have much good advice to give. Yeah.
Thank you, Woody. So one quick, I want to mention what I call the final frontier, and maybe you have a comment or maybe not. I'm often in a situation where we are split between the intention to serve the market, the customers, and also to satisfy the HR. And HR can have a lot of sway and influence on what and how. I'll give you one example. I'll always try and insist that team is the smallest unit of performance. And so if I'm tasked with doing the performance evaluations and all these regular things, I'm trying to push back against picking individuals, cornering them, and then discussing their own individual contribution, because I think it kind of damages the team spirit and the work that the team has done. But it's a challenge because I get pushback saying, look, we pay people for performance, and therefore we need to know each individual what they're doing. Back to Tim's relay race, if we are just focusing on the baton, how do we then assess which runner ran the most and deserves the biggest pay increase? So that's a challenge.
So this is very problematic. That, first of all, what is the purpose of HR? Is it to help the individuals? It's not. It's to protect the organization from lawsuits and stuff like that. So we need to be really, really careful in what we're thinking about here. I think that overall, yeah, the way business is done is faulty. The way that organizations are run is faulty. Do we have the power to fix this in the world? We can at least take steps in that direction. We need to be, so that we even do individual performance reviews, quoting Deming again. You know, Deming pretty much said that's one of the, I don't know, what's it, one of its 7 deadly diseases or whatever it was. He had these different things. But yeah, performance reviews are problematic. That we need them is problematic. That we think we need them is problematic. So there's so much that's wrong in the way things are done.
And
we're
that
not
we
here
think,
to solve those. Yeah.
and also that we think that we pay people for performance. I would push back and say we pay people to deliver value. Performative side of it is maybe secondary.
But our ideas of value are usually quite skewed. So,
yeah,
you know, it's like you can get cast out of a job because you're not giving value that your manager thinks you should be giving. So that's, yeah. So there's so much to this, and yeah, this is for another conversation someday.
Of course, but just, you know, if the team is the smallest unit of performance, then all these considerations evaporate.
We should change the metaphor. It is not human resources department. It should be human trust department.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good. Okay, Matt, you have the last word. You can now save the world, or you can push us into this downward spiral of doom and gloom. Take it away, Matt.
Oh, thanks, Alex. And I know I'll make this real quick since I've done quite a bit of talking. I just wanted to. So first of all, to thank Alex Thoreau for being here. Alex, it's great having you in these discussions, and it's important that we hear from everybody about this, both people like me that are trying to stay on the bleeding edge and trying to figure out what's coming next, and people like Alex that are going, hang on just a second here, like, let's hold our horses a little bit. You know, we need all those voices. So thank you, Alex, for being here. It's great having you. And for pushing back on this stuff. That's what we got to have. Real quick, in terms of the junior senior thing, I think there, as Astrid correctly pointed out, there is still so much value that the seniors on the team and the folks that have been there for a while will need to do for the folks that are early career that are coming on to teams again. I just think the wisdom that we're going to be imparting is going to be different. It will be, so for example, with agentic dev, you still need to understand everything above the raw implementation. So at the cloud level, how data moves around, third-party services, deployment, CI/CD, the list goes on and on. All that traditional stuff that we've done for decades, that hasn't gone away. That's still there. As an AI orchestrator, you have to master those things, I think, more than ever before. So a lot of I think a lot of this, the folks that have been on the team for the longer, the help and the wisdom and the guidance that they give juniors on the team has not gone away. I just feel like, because in my view, the foundation of what the root engineering skill set is evolving to, I think that changes the discussion of how do we ramp up folks that are early career. But I don't think that goes away. And so I just wanted to, I guess, underline that. That's all I got. Thanks, Alex.
Okay, great. Thank you, Matt. On that bombshell, let's adjourn. You have heroically endured 2 hours and 10 minutes. There's 13 survivors. I would like to continue. I don't know what's the appetite, but I suggest we can try again, maybe next Friday, or you suggest some other time slot. I'm open. But I think this is very important. We're all learning a lot from each other, and hopefully something good will come out of it. Always happy to have those people who are concerned about AI. We want to hear more pushback because we are easily excited. Matt, I know you are, I am. We get all kind of swept away. Oh, this is amazing.